we'll now start rolling here. And Drew, I want to ask you these questions. So we'll start off with the Raiders. And as you know, like we had a tumultuous season. We let go of Josh McDaniels. We had quarterback woes.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank the Lord. And so anyways, this whole offseason has been just basically, it started off as a waiting game. Who are we picking as a head coach? What are we doing as a GM? Now we're kind of on the right track in terms of like our headspace is like, what are we thinking in terms of quarterback? Definitely not Jimmy G because he's, pumping that juice. So he's not going to be on the team at all.
My favorite jokes I'm sorry to interrupt, but on X where everyone was like, are we sure he was taking performance enhancing drugs? I could have swore he was not.
No, he needs to get his money back. If that's the case, he needs to ask for a refund.
I told my wife what I really wanted to post, and I'm kind of mad I didn't. I don't know why I didn't, but I was like, man, I really wish I would have went on X and wrote, this is why we need to allow athletes to use performance-enhancing drugs, because it doesn't always work.
Well, hold on. So I don't know if you heard or not, and I can't remember where I saw this announcement. I thought X at another sports league promotion company, they're trying to come up with the enhanced games or something like that, where it's essentially a variety of like similar games that are like in the Olympics or in some form of like, worldwide competition, to where they'll actually allow you to be on performance enhancers and compete. Yeah. Juice, whatever. You can have whatever you want that you think is going to get you over the edge, and then still have them compete in that same competition. And then I could have sworn I heard that X or Elon Musk, Mr. Twitter owner, is the one that was going to help fund it or in some form or fashion, I thought. But you might actually get your wish to allow some folks to be juicing and compete at the same time. So anyways,
interesting.
So the first question I have for you in this Raiders offseason is, as you know, Tom Telesco, we hired him as the GM. I know you told me this, but what's your thoughts regarding Telesco, and like, what are you hoping that Telesco does now that he's the new GM?
So I'll start off with this. I actually really liked Tom Telesco. I thought he did an amazing job in Los Angeles for the Chargers. And for everyone who's listened to the show or who knows me, they know I'm not a Charger fan at all. I was even mad that my daughter goes to a school where their team or their school is the Chargers. And I was like, no, I can't. And then I almost told her, well, I did tell her, but she ended up buying it anyway. I said, you're not allowed to buy a shirt or a sweatshirt from them because it says Chargers on it. Mm-hmm. And she was like, Dad, it's not even the San Diego Chargers or the Los Angeles Chargers. It's just my school. And I was like, it still says Chargers, and I'm not really fond of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually a true story. Yeah, I really liked what he did. I know a lot of people crush him for, well, he's the one who signed Derwin James. He made the trade for Khalil Mack, which actually Khalil Mack ended up doing, I thought, did a great job. Mm-hmm. And he did draft Joey Bosa for a few years. He was really good. I know right now he's kind of slowing down, but like Derwin James at the time he was being signed, yes, he had some injury problems, but he was one of the best safeties in the game. So mm-hmm. For me, it's kind of hard to kill him for that. He made the pick with Justin Herbert after everyone was like, he needs to go after Tua. They need to draft Tua. Tua's obviously the better quarterback. And he went and drafted Justin Herbert, and look at where they're at. He's the one who was okay moving off. I forget who the running back was there with Austin Eckler. Totally blanking right now. But he was like, well, we're going to stick with just Austin Eckler and have him as our number one running back.
Oh, you're talking about Melvin Gordon.
Yes, Melvin Gordon. There you go. And it's worked out splendidly. And a lot of people are like, I don't know if Austin Eckler can be a number one guy. Yeah, he's this workout fiend, but all he does is get injured. And it worked out great for him. People crush him about the Mike Williams draft. Well, listen, I think Mike Williams, when he's on the field, is phenomenal. he's obviously a game changer, and he works fantastically with Justin Herbert. Yes, he does get injured, but at the same time, he is a really good receiver. Keenan Allen again. So there's a lot of these good things that he ended up bringing to the Chargers. And the only thing I would have an issue with Tom Telesco is his issue is getting the right coach. And that's the only thing I am a little worried about with Tom Telesco. I think he hired the right coach. I think Antonio Pierce was the right move to go with. Even if it ends up being really bad or worse with Josh McDaniels, I think his hands were tied at this point. I know you and I have talked about this where we had a coach where a lot of guys were saying, a lot of the players were saying, no, let's keep Rich Bisaccia. They ended up signing Josh McDaniels. Well, that failed miserably. Mm-hmm. So then Antonio Pierce comes in and all of a sudden the team gets rejuvenated. And it's like, you can't do it again where you're like, no, the players are like, no, we want Antonio Pierce. And you're like, no, he's not the right guy. I think Tom Telesco hands are tied. So if this Antonio Pierce thing fails absolutely miserably, I'm not going to blame him because I think, like I said, his hands are tied. He kind of had to make that move. It's the next coach that you can judge him on. Now, if it works out splendidly, again, I'm not going to give him all the credit for Antonio Pierce, but if he brings in the right players, and he already made a great statement saying, we're not trading Davante Adams. We're not letting him go at all. Yeah. I really like Tom Telesco. I think he did a bang-up job with the Chargers. The Brandon Staley thing and staying with Brandon Staley is kind of my issue. And, we'll see what happens, if Antonio Pierce starts going wrong, how long he'll stick with him. That'll be kind of interesting to watch. But for the most part, I think this is a great home run hit, in my opinion. I know you would have preferred Kelly as the GM, and I was on that board too. But second choice, and now I'm kind of starting to think about it. He may have been my number one choice. I really like Tom Telesco.
Yeah, I think my apprehension with Tom Telesco was the optics of, we're hiring the Chargers, old GM who they fired because the Raiders put an absolute shellacking on the Chargers to warrant their dismissal, basically. And, and I get he has a really good track record with pointing out talent and signing some guys like, Khalil Mack. And I think at the time in this offseason, they signed JC Jackson, which was a huge one at the time. This was before, obviously, the season that they had a really underwhelming playoff run where, the Jaguars came back and defeated the Chargers when they were up by 27 or whatever. Yeah. And I would have thought that would have been the offseason to get rid of, Brandon Staley, because what coach survives that after you're a defensive guy, supposedly you have all these signed players and you spend all this money and then you go and do that. And, I was like, hey, there's no way he keeps his job. And I would have thought Telesco would have made the decision to we got to reset and we'll figure it out again. So my apprehension was the optics of it of we're hiring somebody that just got let go from a job, and I would have so on and so forth. But the more that he's in, I think, yes, I was a huge fan of Champ Kelly, still am. I still think that he would have been a great GM. Yeah, I think he's still under contract with the Raiders, so it's not like he's going anywhere. He's still on the team per se. To what capacity down the road, I don't know. But, I do love that he's still there. I do believe that he would have made a great GM. And, who knows? Some franchise is going to get real lucky and get him if he doesn't stick with the Raiders, which he deserves an opportunity. But, I think what's a great thing is Mark Davis hired Antonio Pierce first, which is kind of usually unprecedented. Usually, when you make a decision to hire one than the other, you're deciding what person is going to be essentially the voice of that team to give the final say. And the fact that Mark Davis gave his nod to Antonio Pierce to allow him to be the then head coach, the current head coach, and then they brought on Telesco and all that stuff. So, I mean, I think it's great that you have a rookie head coach who's putting around some other former head coaches and other seasoned, coordinators to kind of like help him. And then you have, a guy in Telesco who's a seasoned GM who's got a track record of finding talent and stuff like that. So I guess what I just really want to make sure is like, we get a guy that can actually get talent. And I think what I'm more concerned with is somebody that can find that talent and getting to a coaching staff that can develop that talent. Because for the past few seasons, our problem has been we would draft players, they don't develop, they go to another team, they do develop, and then they end up being like great players leaving the Raiders. So, what I would hope to see for the Raiders is like we get a coach that stands on the culture that the Raiders is and expectations. And, I've seen a lot of his podcast interviews referring to Antonio Pierce about like what he's wanting to do with the Raiders, what he did getting in there, what his expectations are. So I'm excited about that. But I also want to see it on the field. I want to see what we do in the draft. I know that Antonio Pierce has a way to speak to players and expectations and stuff. And, he's not an X's and O's guy, but he's a guy that just works really, really hard and will make sure everybody else does that. And I want to see what Telesco does with bringing in some really talented guys. And especially when we have a lot of these late round picks deep in the draft, I want to know like what he could find for us, because realistically to separate us, it's not just the first and the second rounders, it's those fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh rounders that could make a difference depending on, how well your scout team is or how well you scout that particular player. So I guess that's my initial thoughts to the Telesco hiring, and we'll see, man. Like, it's been really exciting. He's, so far they got some great plans. Like you said, they are not trading Devontae Adams, which I'm excited for. They made it known that they're going to attempt to re-sign Josh Jacobs, which I hope they do. I mean, he's only 26 and there's a lot of running back free agents on the market. And, Jacobs is one of the younger ones of the bunch. So he's still got a lot left in the tank if we can re-sign him. And he's been with the Raiders since, 2019? So, or 2018 or some, I think he was in that draft class. But regardless, though, like Josh Jacobs, Max Crosby, those guys are Raiders. I don't know how we can let them go, especially Jacobs, and not, take care of them, so to speak. So that's my thoughts on the Telesco hiring.
One thing I did want to say about that I'm really excited about with Antonio Pierce is the statement he made when he was officially signed as the head coach. Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. If that doesn't sound like a Raider head coach, I have no idea. And I love that, like Kenny King Jr., who was a friend of the show.
Yeah.
When he was on and we were talking about Raiders, I mean, he's been all over Twitter since the hiring of Antonio Pierce. Like every day he tweets that. Ill intent, physicality, violence, pain. Love it. I just love it.
Yeah. I was telling you when they made AP the interim, even social media team felt different. Like it felt so much better and like, and just, and just so mean. And I loved it. And then now like, I'm following AP now on Instagram, and I see him in his lowrider. He's rolling through Vegas and he's all decked out. And then he talks the way he does about what the Raiders are going to stand for. And man, it pumps me up like as if I'm going to go play for him. And there's no way I'm making that team, but hey, let's go do it. What do you need, coach? So
love it. Love it.